Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to the webinar. My name is Joel Stoner, and I'm from Altermedia. And today we're talking about equipment management in Studio Suite XI. Just a couple quick housekeeping notes. Will be about 45 to 60 minutes. I am recording this, so it'll be posted to our site or actually our YouTube channel probably in the next week or so. Type any questions you have as they come up. I may answer them in line if I see them or at the end. And then let us know if you have any topics you'd like to see a webinar. This is the second webinar of the year. We are restarting our series. So let us know if you have any topics you'd like to see. So this next slide, many of you have seen before, so sorry if you have. But for those of you that are new, I want to kind of give a map of the whole bigger picture of Studio Suite so we can see how equipment fits into that. So at the highest level, we have a production, which equates to kind of the season of a TV show, feature film, any kind of large multi-phase project. And you, of course, can have many productions going on at one time. And within a production, there are one or more projects. And a project equates to like an episode of a TV show, one large aspect of a film like pre-production, shooting, editing, mixing, maybe equipment rental, and then maybe just a reel of film or however you want to subdivide a larger project down into smaller things. Those are projects. They can also be just like a one-off job. Like we're doing this today and that's it. So productions can have many projects and projects can stand alone by themselves. And then within each project, we've got events. And you can have multiple events, of course. And an event is when any of the resources that you've got, and that's why I want to talk about this today, because one of those resources is equipment. So I just want you to see how this fits into the bigger picture. So these are all of our resources, and these are things from the rooms module that we've made a resource equipment, a resource people, a resource, and so on. But when we take any of those resources, which can have multiple rates, hourly rates, daily rates, weekly rates, client-specific rates, as well as rental style rates, and we apply them to a date and a time. That's what we call an event. And you could have a bunch of different events on a project of different types, equipment events, room events, people events, service events. And those events are what appear on a calendar. And those can also be sent out to any kind of mobile device. And then those are also what eventually turn into line items on an invoice, and which can then be exported out to some kind of accounting software. And just to complete the slide, all of this ties back to a library, and there are tasks, and finally, it all ties back to the client. So again, sorry if you've seen that slide before, but I want any new folks to be able to kind of see how equipment fits into the larger picture of Studio Suite as a whole. So that's enough slides. Let's go to Studio Suite. So before we dig right into equipment, we need to look at some of the more boring kind of foundational stuff so we can make sure all of our equipment and equipment rates get populated the way we want them to. Different facilities like different things to be set up or need different things relevant to equipment. So let's go into the setup area. This is where you set up your company. I'm going to jump right over to taxes because that's relevant here. If you are renting equipment, different states or cities have different tax rules about this. In Los Angeles, for example, equipment rental is not taxable. But in New York, if I'm not mistaken, equipment rental is taxable. So if we were to create I'm just going to put in a New York tax here so we can see how that's done, NY tax. So that's now available to me as a tax, and I would go over to equipment and say, so when I rent equipment, it's going to have the applicable New York tax rate, and I have no idea what that is. I'm going to call it 0.09. So now any equipment rate that I make will now have New York tax applied to it. If you don't have tax in your world, you can hit the clear button on that, and that will just go away. If you have a bunch of taxes and they're all applicable, you can always hit this all button, and now all taxes will be applied. Okay, so that's taxes. Next thing we need to look at is module preferences, and we're going to go to the projects subtab. And the relevant thing here is this multi-day events as continuous. So if you're booking a studio or a person Monday through Friday, chances are they're coming in Monday 9 to 5, Tuesday 9 to 5, Wednesday 10 to 6, whatever, they come in later. Each day, you probably need to have as a separate line item on the project so that you can track different times and statuses that are relevant to each day. Equipment is different. If it goes out on Monday, it's gone until it comes back on Friday, let's say. And you want that to occupy a single line item on the project because you don't need to track individual details for each day of the week. So when we're focusing on equipment rental, those projects we would set up our default as multi-day events as continuous. And this is the default for every project. So if you're a facility that does both, you might want to leave this off because on a per project basis and also a per event basis, you can specify what the default should be. So in my imaginary facility, I do both kinds, so I'm going to leave that off just so I can show you how on a per project basis we'll turn it back on. Okay, next we need to look at value lists. So out of the box, these are the categories that come with Studio Suite: rooms, equipment, people, kind of like those resource categories we saw in the other slide. What a lot of our customers do that are focusing on exclusively on equipment, or they have a ton of equipment, is they subdivide these categories a little bit. And I'm going to do some of that for you right now. So here is equipment, but let's say I've got lighting equipment and audio equipment and camera equipment, and I want to be able to get separate reporting on kind of those different divisions. So I'm going to hit the plus sign here, and I'm going to call this EQ lighting. And I'm going to put this under the sort order of 2.1. And we'll see that that's going to drop in right underneath equipment. I'm going to do this again. And this is going to be cameras. And this is going to be 2.3. And the 2.3 is essentially the sort order, if that's not obvious enough. I guess I should have done 2.2. Okay, so I'll add audio, EQ audio 2.2. And those of you paying attention have noticed that I need to do this, EQ for equipment, cameras. So now we have EQ lighting, EQ audio, EQ cameras. You see how we would continue on down that. And so now those are all of the categories that we can assign our equipment to. Each category, or some categories, need to be connected to the module they're in. That's this internal category. So any one of your equipment categories can have this item here called equipment that essentially associates it to the module. And we only want one of these to be linked. So just make it the first one. The next two columns over are the kind of QuickBooks accounting columns. And so this would be the account name that all of our equipment items are going to have in our rates that are applicable to them. And then the account type. This is typically an inventory part in something like QuickBooks or other accounting software. So now that every rate that we create for equipment will have the appropriate export information. I know it seems like we're jumping way, way ahead in the kind of end result, but since we're going to create a bunch of equipment, we want to make sure they're all flagged a good way. Now, equipment typically we don't share in the calendar, so I'm going to leave this off. And when I say share calendar, I mean external calendars like iCal and Google Calendar and things like that. So the next thing over is the invoice description. How do we want equipment line items to be described on the invoice line item? So typically that would be start date and maybe item name, and actually maybe should be have end date there, and then item name, and then maybe rate name. So this is going to put obviously those things on there, and you can see why different types of things want to have different invoice descriptions. So for example, media, if we're still selling, tapes or CDs or hard drives, even the start date and times aren't relevant. If we're selling studio time, the times are relevant, but equipment, usually it's the whole day. So times are not relevant. So that's why we have kind of a constructed invoice description there for different categories of stuff that we do. Okay, next tab over is booking statuses. And the reason we're going to look at these is because there's a group of them that are relevant especially to equipment. So typically you've got things like confirmed and hold and bumpable, quote, approved, assigned, things like that. But the ones that are especially important for equipment are these groups right here: not checked out, checked in, and overdue. I don't know how request got in there, but it could be an equipment request as well. And the reason these are particularly important is this little section over here. Some statuses are special. Studio Suite needs to know what your version of the following statuses are. So hold. So, if you're booking it for 9 to 5, but they want to hold it till 8 o'clock, it knows what your word for hold is. Some people might have it in a different language or a different phrase or whatever. And then same with some of these other things. Like if I add equipment to a project, that's going to happen next week, but I'm adding it today to reserve it. That is to be checked out, and our version or your version of that is the status called not checked out, and so on. When we scan a barcode and check it out, we want it to correspond to the status that we've created called checked out. And the reason we have to do this is mainly multi-language scenarios, but also different people have different words or phrases for how they describe things. So once we get these statuses associated with these specific, once we get our own, statuses that we've created associated with the kind of locked-in coded statuses, then we're good to go. Finally, in the setup area, what I'm going to look at is record numbers. So maybe as you're starting to import or set up your equipment, you want them all to start at 1,000 or something like that, or 10,000. So this is where we can specify what that next number is. Once you determine that, you start creating numbers, equipment records. This number will increment up, which is why mine is at 12,000. But if I wanted my next entry to come to be at 13,000, that's what I would do. But I don't, so I'm going to cancel. And okay, so that's it for some of the kind of boring background setup information. Let's jump into, well, first I'm going to jump into rooms, because equipment has to live somewhere. And we want to make sure as we're creating equipment, we know where to put it. So I've got a room here called Equip Room. And I made it short because that way I'll be able to see it in a column in a minute. I'll show you. So to create a new room, I just hit the new button here. Also Command N or Control N on your keyboard if you're a PC. So I'm going to call this webinar room. Oops. And I'm going to call this, so we don't have something like a locker here. I'll call it a closet. And just so you know, you can call it equipment. You can type in there as well. Equipment closet. If you've got multiple buildings, you can edit that list. And the webinar equip room, I don't need to make it a resource because I'm never scheduling the room. It's just where all the equipment is. So if I go over to the next, this tab here, installed equipment, we'll see there's nothing in there. But if I drag my little cursor here back to Studio A, we can see there's the equipment installed in Studio A. So that's why we want to be able to specify what room all of the equipment is in. You can also have a truck, of course. So you can set a truck up as a room, and that would contain all of the equipment. So somebody's asking some questions. Can categories be merged later on? Yes, so you can divide the categories. You can merge categories later on. It's better to do it at the beginning, especially if you've got 1,000 pieces of equipment, because you need to go kind of adjust them one at a time. And there's a reason you have to do it one at a time, which I'll mention later. Somebody said, is there a way to divide a room into shelves and lockers? For the library module, we do have a shelf field to be able to say that this piece of media, this hard drive, is on that shelf. In the world of rooms, I would say create multiple rooms. So this is, locker, equipment locker, shelf 1, shelf 2, equipment locker, shelf 3, and so on. Locker 1, locker 2, locker 3 as all separate rooms. That'd be the best way to handle that. And somebody's asking, if we have an Excel list of equipment, can that be imported? The answer is yes, and I'm going to show you a trick for that in a little bit. Okay, that's the questions for the moment. So we talked about rooms, and here we can see the rooms, the equipment in that room. And I can either get to the equipment a couple different ways. I can go to one of these items. That'll take us to that item in equipment. I can also take the shortcut right here from rooms. This is going to jump me right into the equipment that's relevant to that. Of course, I could jump back to main menu and go directly there. So here is the main detail screen of equipment. Let's stretch this out a little bit, and I'm going to talk about the screen for a little bit. So manufacturer, model, description, those are some pretty basic things. If you have more than one item, this is where you can say that this is number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. Some people have confused this with how many I have, and that's what this field over here is for. And smack in the middle there is this pool checkbox. And so I want to talk about pools in a minute. The type of equipment, this is just a convenient way to be able to kind of subdivide the equipment you've got into, furniture, office, rental, props, costumes. You can edit that list however you like. And then room location, and then list with rooms. And so the reason we have two is the room location is where it physically is. In its stored state. If you're doing equipment rental and it's out at the customers, it would still be at the room location. And list with room is more of a studio thing because sometimes you'll have equipment in a machine room that still gets listed with the studio. So this is kind of allows you to separate that a little bit. Next, we're going to go over to serial numbers, barcodes, purchase date, lease own, to help keep track of that kind of thing. Where you got it from, is there a version? Maybe if this is software. Warranty expiration. Smart sort is kind of outdated, but back in the days when in a recording studio, for example, the thing you would put at the top of the list was your big expensive console, followed by your speakers and the tape machines, and then down to your outboard gear and then microphones. So this would kind of auto-enter that based on those descriptions, but you can also just type in your own number here as well. And that's when we're printing out a list, it will put that in kind of a smart order rather than alphabetical or the random order that you entered it in. Do we include this piece of equipment in our promo list of equipment? So obviously the big expensive fancy items you would, but the little smaller items you might not, adapters and cables and so forth. How much does it weigh? Dimensions. These are more relevant if you're shipping a lot of equipment. And Studio Suite, if you put together a big equipment order, will tell you how much the whole thing weighs, as long as you've got some information there. Dimensions, how big it is. And if it goes out of service at any particular date, that will let us know when that happened. Cost, what we paid. Value is maybe something aside from what we paid. Maybe I paid a lot of money for it and it's not worth so much anymore. Down payment, monthly payment, just to keep track of that. Earnings, this is interesting. So obviously you're booking equipment all the time, and or well, not obviously, maybe you are booking equipment all the time. Each time you book it, it's going to create some cash revenue for you, and this is a summary of all of that. If this has not yet paid for itself, that means that this is going to be a negative number in red. So this means that we've earned at least $1,200 plus another $1,815 on top of that. So we're in the green on this, so to speak. Okay, lease number, lease expiration, pretty self-explanatory. Owned by, this is interesting. So this says it's owned by external companies. So when I click in here, I'm going to get a drop-down list of my various different vendors. Parts RS, maybe you have an equipment rental partner that you work with. So what this lets you do is actually import their list of equipment and say it's owned by them, and then that makes it available for you to rent from them. So that's kind of neat. But typically, it's going to be owned internally, and in that scenario, you're going to see a drop-down list of your internal companies. So in my case, let's call this my Planet Perfect Rentals. Maybe you need to keep track of who insures it. Maybe there's an IP address, subnet mask. And origin is the country of manufacture. If you are shipping equipment overseas, you need to keep track of where this thing was made because that affects tariffs and taxes and import duties and all that kind of stuff. Jumping over here is accessories. So a lot of equipment has a lot of little parts to it. And then there's a bit of a discussion of do we want to create a separate equipment record for the little doodad, adapter, doohickey things? Maybe this would be something more like manual, case, cable. So if you are kind of going in a low-key, relaxed environment, you could put these things in here like that. If you need to make sure that every one of those things that goes out certainly comes back, maybe you do want to create a separate equipment record for those, barcode them, and so on. This is just comments about this thing. Hey, I bought it from my friend Jim or whatever. And flags, this is where you can specify that maybe flag certain pieces of equipment as things you want to sell or that need fixing. Well, that's not right. Better things you want to sell. Maybe if you've got multiple owners in your facility, you could say, flag 2 is owned by Bob and flag 3 is owned by Steve or something like that. And then I'm going to go down to package. So we can create packages of equipment. So the way this one is set up, that whenever this piece of equipment is booked, these 3 items are going to come along with it. The microphone, a camera, which makes no sense at all, and this various accessory. So I'm going to delete the camera. And I'm going to add another item to this package so we can see how that works. So I hit the plus sign. And here is 2 tabs at the cross. This is all equipment. And this is going to allow me to pick from a list of all of the equipment that I have, whether or not it is a resource, which I haven't talked about yet, or it's going to filter it to only show me my resources. And then in that resource view, I can also filter it to only show me equipment. And the reason we did that is, again, because kind of getting back to this accessory idea, maybe we are going to make separate equipment records for the manual, for the case, for the cable, but we don't necessarily want to tie up our resources with them because we would never rent those out alone by themselves. So this brings us into the topic of resource. So I'm going to go to my list tab and I'm going to find all. And here we see a lot of my equipment is resources and a lot of it is not. What's the deal with that? So here you can see I've got 2,400 pieces of equipment. A lot of it is screwed into the walls. A lot of it is a component of another component. And a lot of it is stuff that we don't necessarily rent or book or sell by itself. When I say sell, I don't mean sell, I mean rent. So some equipment doesn't need to be a resource, and we want to minimize the number of resources, only make the ones that really are rentable be resources, just to make that list as small as possible when we go searching for stuff. So getting back to here, when I pick a item that goes along with this, I do have the option to come into equipment and choose an item that is actually not a resource as part of the package, which is a newer feature that we've added, which helps minimize the data volume. Okay, I'm going to touch back on equipment for a second. You recall in earlier on resource, I meant to say, when we set up the categories, we had the generic equipment, but I also set up one on EQ lighting, EQ audio, EQ cameras. And the reason we might want to do that is so that we can kind of subcategorize our reporting. How much lighting equipment or business did we do this quarter? How much audio this quarter? How much camera rentals did we have? And so on. So since this is a piece of audio equipment, I'll call this EQ audio. And whenever we change that, it's letting us know that we might need to update some of the calendar presets, because maybe we've got a preset that contains this item which is now slightly different, and so the preset needs to be updated to reflect that. And then I'm going to go over here and look at depreciation schedules. I'm just going to find something that doesn't have one, like this Roland keyboard. So let's say that when we got this way back in the 80s, we paid, I don't know, $1,200 for it. And at the end of its life, which maybe is, let's call it now, or let's say after a 5-year depreciation, I'm going to say it's got a residual value of, I have no idea, don't flame me, let's say it's $150. So I'm saying 5 years after I got it on my purchase date, which is, where is my purchase date? Purchase date, there it is. So let's say I got this. I'll just pick any old date here, and then I'm going to edit the year to be 2008. So now I want to create a depreciation schedule. So I just hit the button, and what it's going to do is mark out each interval in this left area here. This is the monthly depreciation, so we can see how much this thing's worth every month until it gets down to our $150 value, and the accumulated depreciation. Your accountants will love this. And then over here, it's the annual. So 1 year, 2 years. So on the 5th year, it's worth 150 with $1,050 of accumulated depreciation. Okay, I'm going to, resource permission groups. This is designed for educational facilities that have a bunch of equipment kind of ranging in different levels that they want to be able to assign to, maybe some to freshmen, some to sophomores, some to juniors, some to seniors, or maybe even to individual classes. So I'm going to jump over back to contacts for a little bit. And this is a little bit of an offshoot, so sorry about that. But here's contacts. I think some of you have seen this before. Here's groups down in the bottom area. And basically what I want to do is edit my groups. And we can see here that I had a group called seniors, and I flagged this as a resource permission group. And this is essentially going to govern what people can see. So I'm going to make another one called what they can use, I'm sorry. and I'm going to flag this as a resource permission group and add that. So now I have a freshman resource permission group. And if I want to add Eddie Editor to that group, I would just click on it. And he's also, let's say, in the senior group. So the senior obviously can rent equipment that the freshman can as well. So I'm going to close that. We can see now that Eddie Editor is a freshman and a senior, and they're in bold, indicating that those are resource permission groups. And just in case I didn't make that clear enough, what that lets us do is when we're going to go rent the equipment, we can filter for the resource permission group of the client to be able to see the equipment, only the equipment that they're allowed to see. So that's resource permission groups. And if I come back here, I can say that this keyboard is accessible by seniors and not freshmen, or sure, let's make it available to everybody. Okay, so I've kind of given you a rough idea of the main data tab for equipment. And I did that first before I talked about this little dealy bob right here. So most of your equipment will be entered as an item. It's a one-off deal because that's just the easiest way to do it. Now, if you're the kind of place that has a bunch of the same kind of thing, maybe you've got 5 expensive cameras that are all basically the same, they just have different serial numbers, and you don't want to have to enter them 5 times. You'd like to enter it once. And in that scenario, you may want to be able to say that next Thursday, I need 3 of those cameras, and today I don't care which one they are. I just need to put any random 3 of them on hold so that when next Thursday comes around, I know that they'll still be available, and I can pick out the actual 3 that are going out the door at that minute. And so that kind of scenario would create as a collection. And let me do one of those. So I'm going to create a new collection. So it says, after defining as much detail as you can, including rates, click the green Add button in the collection area at the bottom left to determine the members of the collection. Okay, so let's say the manufacturer is Sony. And I'm going to call this a JK500 camera. So I'm basically defining the generic details about a group of things. So let's say I got them all today, and I purchased them, and I bought them from somewhere like that. And warranty expiration, I could fill out all this stuff. I don't know, they're £9, and I paid $49,782 for them. Expensive. And they could all be on the same lease. And they're all owned by my internal company called Planet Perfect Rentals. And they're all made in Japan. Something like that. And I'm also going to go in and create a rate for it. So I'll go here. And I guess this starts the rate discussion. Okay, so finally we're here at our rate. And so here's our Sony JK Camera 1. I'm going to call this a daily rate. And I'm going to do the unit of measure as day. And in my place, let's say I do a 4-day week and a 10-day month. And let's just say I have no idea what these imaginary things might go for, so I'm going to call it, I don't know, $500 a day. And I know that my daily expense, if I break down my annual payments on this, is I don't know, $40 a day it costs me to own this camera. I'm not going to get too deep into rates, but if we needed to make it a client-specific rate, we could. If there were rate cards, we could. Action I'm going to leave. Here is the accounting details. We can get into overtime rates, which aren't typically applicable for equipment. And then there's some checkboxes down here. This one is kind of interesting here. Use as child item rate. So in the scenario of a package, let's say the lens, when we rent a lens with the camera, let's say that the lens is free. It's included in that package. And so in that scenario, we would create a rate for the lens that's free. And we would say use as child item rate. And then whenever that lens is a child item to a camera, it'll come in at the free rate that goes along with it. If we also rent the lens standalone by itself, that same lens can be rented 2 different ways, either free or as a standalone. Then we create another rate that is not checked. And in each of those scenarios, the appropriate rate will be applied. And if you want to pick the other one, you certainly can. But it's just a way to kind of have it automatically choose the right rate when it's a package and the right rate when it's not a package. include in rate sheet. So if you've got a lot of big fancy things you want to show your rates for, you could do that, and smaller things are less interesting, you can not check that checkbox. Okay, so there's our daily rate for the camera. Went a little too much on that. We could create more rates for this as well. Let's say this is just going to be a daily rate, or an hourly rate. So I don't know, $50 an hour. So now we've got two rates for the camera hourly. And once you get going on these, it's easy to get them going quick. I'm going to come back to collections, and I'm going to move on to pools for a minute. So pools are a different kind of equipment. Examples of pool items are like sandbags, cables, adapters, things that you might have a bunch of that you do not need to track individually. You've probably got a mountain of sandbags in the corner. Maybe you've got some 10-pound bags. Those would be one pool. Maybe you've got some 20-pound bags. Those would be another pool. So let me find some of those. So here are some small sandbags, large sandbags, and these are all flagged as pools, so that they only need to occupy one line item in our equipment inventory. If we've got 20 sandbags, we don't need 20 separate records for each one because they're all the same. And the other cool thing about it is when we add them to projects, we could have a single line item called 10 sandbags. We don't have to create 10 line items in the project just for those. And so those are called pool items. And since there may be some confusion, what's the difference between a pool and a collection? Let me just talk about it a little bit more. Collections, again, are typically, if you think of a museum collection, they're expensive. And in our world, they're similar. So we've got 10 of the same thing. We don't want to have to enter them 10 times. We need to rent them generically in the future. And then book them out specifically, number 1, number 7, number 3. And then we want those exact ones to come back, and we want to make sure those exact ones come back because they're expensive. And then pools are, again, I think you get pools. So there is a difference between a collection and a pool. So now what I'm going to do is go find a collection so that we can see how that works. EXP is expensive. Okay, so here is my cameras right here. So I'm going to go to one of these. So here is a piece of equipment. It's a member of a collection. I can see that because the word collection is underlined and it's showing me there's 5 of them. And if I go to the collection tab, I can see the other members of the collection. And if I wanted to jump up to the collection itself, I'm going to click the Go To button there. Now we're in the Equipment Collection module, and we can see all members of that collection, and we can see the resources of the members of the collection. So notice this little bracket thing here. It looks like a C, so we called it, we used the left bracket for collection. And in other places where we're looking at pools, we're going to see a right bracket, and if you flip the right bracket to the right, it looks like a pool. And the reason we chose those that you'll see in a little bit too. So there's an equipment collection. I'm going to jump back to these, and now I'm in the equipment inventory looking at the 5 members. I'm scrolling through each 5 of these, and we can see the details of each one. Okay, so I'm going to go to rates, and we talked about rates in the concept of collections, but I'm going to pretend that I'm just, we're going to get away from the collection concept for a minute, and I'm going to create a bunch of rates very quickly for a bunch of equipment. So let's say I'm doing a day rate right now, and in my world, a day rate has a suffix of _day, and this is kind of an automated way to be able to say that I want our rental rates per day to be 5% of the cost of it. And that's going to calculate as it goes through. And it's also letting me adjust the item name as I go through. So I'm going to flip ahead to some items that don't have rates. So here's one. I'm just going to go boom, and it's going to quickly create a rate for me. I can put in a price there if I want to. I have to reselect this value here. That'll calculate that. Put in 45, 450, 45. And so I'm going to quickly create that rate. There's our 45. I'm going to go to the next item. I remember what's going on there. So we need to specify it, the percentage per item. So boom. So this is just so you don't, every time you create a new piece of equipment, you don't have to go through and do this whole big thing. It's just going to let you do it very quickly. And I think this came out in XI. So that's the quick rate module, or quick rate function, I should say. Event history. So this is showing every time this piece of equipment has been used, and the status of it and the last projects that it was used on. So if it comes back broken or doesn't come back at all, we know who to go talk to. And it's also showing the total revenue that we've generated from this minus its cost equals its earnings. So this is a nice little area over here to be able to see the, how we doing price-wise on this. So these are the actual usages of this piece of equipment. There's also a scan manager, and this is really more of an inventory management system. So I'm going to put in my name. And let's say I'm in the equipment room, and I'm going to put in a barcode. And I think I've got one here called 8888. So notice I'm on this rolling thing. I'm going to go 8888. It's the same as scanning in a barcode. And it quickly went and found that expensive camera, number 8888. And it put the current date and time, my name, and who's on it, and that the location of it was in the equipment room. And I can say that it's scratched. And so basically you would have somebody walk through the equipment locker with a barcode scanner. They would just keep scanning equipment. J5000. No, I've got one here called 12345, 12345. And it went and found this Sony video machine, put today's date, time on it, my name, where it is, and then it's working. Last time this tape machine was dusty. So the value of this is not only to keep track of, hey, when's the last time we saw this piece of equipment, but to be able to search for all of the equipment that has ever been scanned. And I always use the same pieces, so only 5 have been scanned. But if I jump back to my event history, I can also look at the items that have been scanned since maybe January of this year. And this is going to be just 2. And then similarly, all of the items that have never been scanned or haven't been scanned since this date. So that's going to be a giant list of a few thousand records. So equipment inventory management. When's the last time we saw it? Who saw it? Where was it? What condition was it in? This is what you can do on Scan Manager. And there's this section here called Force Check-in. Sometimes in the heat of battle, equipment gets checked out or in, or it's been brought in somehow that didn't get checked in properly or checked out properly. And so in those scenarios, we've got a button here called Force Check-in. And maybe you deleted the project that it was checked out on by accident. So that would be a scenario where we're going to have to force check it in because we can't go to that project and check it in because the project's deleted. So sometimes that happens, and this is how you can fix those scenarios. Maintenance. I'm going to try to do this one quickly. So this is when the next maintenance is due, and the appropriate people will get a notification on startup that, hey, you've got some maintenance that's due. I'm going to quickly create a new piece of maintenance down here with a little plus sign. And this is where I would say that the status of it needs attention. Here's the problem. Where is it? Is there a barcode? And here is more details on the problem. How it was patched, if that's relevant. Did we order any parts? This is pretty self-explanatory. This is my favorite checkbox. Operator error. Order date, service date, action taken. It took 2 hours at $10 an hour, and 39 cents worth of parts, $20.39. We also have the option to block book it out. So if we need to send it to the manufacturer today at 11, and it's going to come back sometime around then at 4 o'clock, this will actually create a booking for it with the status of out of service, which is one of those special statuses that we created earlier, so that nobody else will try to book it while it's out. And the actual maintenance statuses are determined here, so if you want to create your own statuses in your own colors, that's where you would do it. So let's go back to equipment, since that's the topic. Connectors and cables, I'm going to skip over, but this is kind of in the old days when you'd have... here I am doing it. Some connectors on the back of a piece of equipment and plugged into snakes. And where is this is coming up on the wall, and what kind of connector was over there. So nobody uses that, but just for a quick mention. Webviewer is actually kind of cool. So this is showing us all of the information on the website, internet, about this equipment, including eBay, what everybody else is buying and selling it for. Let's go look at Craigslist. Got some good deals here on different parts of equipment. And as I'm scrolling through equipment here, we'll see that it's going to do that search on whichever tab we're on. Maybe let's go look at B&H to see if they've got one of these. Look, they do. And of course, we can go to the manufacturer. So I'm not going to navigate all the way through here, but let's suppose that at some point I'm going to download a PDF user guide for this. And that's where this next tab over here, the Attach an FTP tab is. So I'm going to go find a blank piece of equipment with nothing. And I'm going to go look at demo files on my desktop. And I'm just going to grab any random PDF. Let's pretend this is the manual for this device. And when we attach these attachments, it says, do you want to store this as a reference, meaning to where it is currently on my desktop, which is generally a bad idea because your desktop might not go away or be on the plane or something like that. So we want to store these things typically as a remote file. So this is now stored on my server and everybody's got access to it. And everybody that would need to have access to it would open it. And sorry, this isn't an actual PDF manual. This is an invoice for equipment. So I'm going to close that. So if you wanted to be able to read this, you would hit export and that would create a copy of it on your desktop of the manual for that item that everybody would have access to. So that's how you can attach a manual or maybe a purchase receipt or a schematic or any other kind of document to a particular equipment record within Studio Suite. And then the next tab over is reports. So let's go look at that. And we can always pick what letterhead we want at the top of our report. If we want to filter which of the rooms that we want to look for to include in our report, we can do that. And how we want them sorted and summarized is also interesting. So I'm going to do by room location, and then within that by I could do category, but I don't have a lot of category information. So I'm going to go by manufacturer, and then within that by model. And then so I'm going to just print an equipment list. And notice there's several of them here. This is a generic equipment list. This one is specifically designed for insurance because it's got purchase date and serial numbers and what it's worth. If you're giving an equipment list to your customers, you don't want them to have what you paid or the serial numbers. Maybe you want a maintenance history for the current item or connectors and cables, or maybe you want to print out a bunch of barcodes. We can do that down here. So Avery, this is a sheet of barcode. This is sheets of barcode. This is a Dymo label to print those little one at a time kind of laminated labels. And then this is just a big list of all of our equipment with barcodes. So actually I'm going to do that one first. A lot of rental companies, rather than having to go get the piece of equipment off the shelf, will do this one because they can essentially build a binder by all of their equipment and maybe do it in sections. So they have a tab of cameras. And then from here, they'd be able to just scan out of the binder to rent the piece of equipment. So that's one way to go about it. I'm going to go look at this equipment list right here. And so we've got a bunch of different equipment, and we can see that it's sorting by manufacturer, and then within that by model number. So there's that Sonic Foundry, and then we've got 3 different models of items within there. And these are all customizable. As most of you know, all the reports are totally customizable. And the audit log is going to show the changes that everybody makes to every record within the system, just to have a way to keep track of that. Okay, so we talked about where all this stuff is coming from. The next thing, we've only got a few minutes left. I'm going to try to answer some questions quickly. Hard drive. Okay, I didn't mention that. So library hard disk, let me read the question out loud. We issue hard drives to internal productions for weeks or months at a time, and then they get returned to our equipment room when the production is finished. Should we create a collection for this or the media module for this? I would say collection, and that's a very good question, so thanks for asking it. If you are a facility that buys and sells hard drives to your clients, those ones that you buy and sell would go into the media inventory. Because you have them for a while and then you don't anymore, and you want to be able to keep track of how many you've got left in inventory to sell. If it's really more of a borrowing type thing that this guy's asking for, where they go out and they come back, definitely create them as a collection because you do want them to be uniquely trackable. And you also want to be able to reserve 10 of them next month for a project, and then next month go pick out the actual 10 that you're going to use. So collection is a perfect example for hard drives. But following on that question, there's a little checkbox down here on the left that says library hard disk, and we can specify how it's formatted, RAID capacity, all this kind of stuff. And by making it a library hard disk, it actually becomes available in the Studio Suite library module to put content onto, which is kind of neat. And since we're short on time, I'm not going to show how that works. I'm going to get to some more questions. Can you explain the bill days per week and per month feature? Yes. So that's a rate. A lot of rental companies around town here rent things not by a flat day. It's not necessarily a day rate. They'll in order to compete, they have something called a 4-day week and maybe a 12-day month. So that means that if somebody, let's say it's, I don't know, $100 a day. If somebody needs something for a week, we're only going to charge you for 4 days, or $400 in this case. Or if you need it for a month, we're only going to bill you for 12 days, or $1,200 in this case. And so that's kind of a weird algorithm, because if you book it for say 10 full days, you book it on Monday and then bring it back the following Wednesday or Thursday. Excuse my math. It's going to bill you 4 days for the first week, and then it starts over on the 8th day. So you're going to then have 3, 4, 5. So you have a 7 days worth of billing for a 10-day rental. So hopefully that makes it clear. And you can play with that. And actually, I'll book something if we get that far to show you how that works. Barcode collection items. Can you barcode collection items? Yes, you can. So when I make a collection, each member of that should have its own barcode. So notice here are my collection of 5 cameras, and I've entered barcodes for 2 of them. And I'm not sure if the question was, can you barcode the collection itself? And I believe, yes, you can. So there's a trap door into collections. If you just click on equipment up here, that sneaks you into collection. And yes, you can barcode the collection itself, which means there's no physical object that represents a collection. There's just the collection members. So you could scan in a barcode. It'd have to be from a binder of barcodes, and then that would allow you to book 5 members of a collection or 3 members of a collection with a barcode. But you'd then have to go swap them out for the real ones. Another question: can you book an item as out of service without knowing the return date? No. So in that scenario, it does need an end date, and I would suggest just put a month for now, and if it comes back earlier, then everybody's happy. Okay, so can you walk through the checkout procedure? Yes. Can you construct a report of all projects between 2 dates? Yes. That's not really in the scope of this webinar, though. Is there a way to extend columns? How long before Studio Suite has built-in barcode system with scanning functionality? So yeah, you can do both of those things. So if I go to my list view here, there's a couple things we can do. So I can stretch the window out. That makes some of the columns bigger. If I need to make a certain column bigger, I would go into what's called layout mode and just adjust this. Not every user on a Studio Suite system has access to layout mode, but if you do, this is where you could go in, and I just made the type field wider. So that's certainly available. And Studio Suite does have a built-in barcode system with scanning functionality, and we're going to get to that in a minute. Somebody's asking, can you put multiple consecutive hold-on equipment for sequential rentals? Yes, we'll get to that. When making a collection, when do we get to add their unique serial number barcode? So after the collection is made is when you would do that. So I'm going to jump back into equipment. And here is my list of equipment. And I would just go to each individual item. Here's the barcode field. There's that one. And I'm going to now go to put in 7777 on these items right there. Moving on to the question, hope you can walk through equipment quote, getting there. How do you import an Excel list of equipment? Okay, so I'm going to do that really quickly. I'm going to go to Chrome. So here's our website, studiosuite.com. If you go to support, go to updates. So this is also referring to the person a while ago who asked about importing from Excel. If you scroll all the way down to the bottom of the updates, here's the URL, support updates. Now you can download a Excel migration template, data migration template. I'm going to click on that, download it, and then open that up really quick. So here it is. So there's two tabs at the bottom down here, contacts and equipment. So this works for contacts too, incidentally. You can populate this spreadsheet with your contacts, and then they can be brought into Studio Suite. And down here is the equipment tab where you can copy paste from your spreadsheet into this one. And this also kind of gives you some suggestions about how to divide up the equipment. Once you've got this all in there, you or we can pull this into Studio Suite for you. And I won't do it right now just because we're short on time, but call up tech support and we can help you with this after you've downloaded and populated this form from our website. Okay, hiding Excel, hiding Chrome. Let's finally go do a quote. And we do that in projects. And I'm sorry we're going to be running long, everybody. Too many good questions. I'm going to create a new project. So in Studio Suite, a project, we've talked about that. I'm going to create a new one. It's often called a work order or equipment sheet or something like that. So I hit that new button, and it's now asking me to pick a client. And I can just type a quick couple letters here, and I'm going to pick this guy, James Stevens at Spinning Wheel, and I'm calling this webinar rental quote. And this is going to be a rental project. I thought I had one in my categories here. All right, so let's edit this just so we can show how that works. I'm going to put in rental in my list of project types. So now I'm going to say that this is a rental. People, we can say who's involved. This is optional. We can leave that empty. Notes, maybe I want to say drop it off at 2 o'clock tomorrow, blah, 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 blah. Down here at the bottom, create budget. The word budget, quote, bid, they all mean kind of the same thing. So we'll create this as a budget. So I'm going to hit next. So here I am on my webinar rental quote with no stuff on it. And I want to add some stuff. So there's a couple ways to do that. The first way is to click Add Items. We definitely have the barcode. I'm going to show you this way first. So I'm going to filter this and show just my equipment. Notice I could filter just my lighting equipment, and I don't have any because I haven't assigned any to that category. I don't think I have any audio. Oh, so there's some EQ audio. So I'm going to book that item, and I'm going to go back to all equipment. So I can filter by category. Maybe I want to look at cameras. So I'm going to, we've got 8K cameras. I'm going to go to a normal camera. So here is a list of all of my cameras. And I'm just going to grab a couple. Boom, boom. And we talked about the continuous thing a while ago. And so there's going to be a single day rental. So I'm not going to check the continuous box on these. And now I'm going to change the length of this for some new items. I'm going to say that this is continuous, and I'm going to book a couple other items, this guy and this guy. And we're going to see how these look different. And I'm going to click Add to Project. And often when we're doing a budget, we don't have any sense of dates. So if you know as you're making the quote bid budget what the dates are, do Add to Project. And if you don't, then do Add to Project without dates. Now, because I'm talking about continuous and specific dates here, I'm going to do Add to Project with dates. But typically you might not. So let's take a look at what happened here. So we're on our quote. The Avalon item has come in with some of its child items, as has the Arri camera come in with its child items. They've come in with their default rate. Apparently, this microphone is coming in with a default status, which we haven't talked about, but different resources can have default statuses as well, like on hold or something like that. And the other items came in as well. Let's look at the dates. These items came in as February 6th, and this one down the bottom came in February 6th, ending on February 11th. And so let's make some prices here. These items don't have rates, or not all of them do. So I'm going to override some of these. All right, for you, what I want to do is get an item that's got a weekly rate, day rate, and I'm going to make this be several days long. Could have been a little better prepared on this, but I'm trying to find a day rate that will illustrate how this is working. Oh, I'll take my word for it. If we set up a day rate for it that was a 4-day week, and we scheduled time longer than a week, it would calculate the time relevant to the rate that we had set up. So let's say we're doing some negotiation though with the client, and this is going to be 400. When we override those show up in blue. I'm going to add some other kinds of items. So now I want to find all of my pool items. I need some sandbags. So I'm going to type my right bracket. And so these are all of my pool items. And when I select a pool item, it's showing me the quantity that I have, that I own, and then the quantity that is available. So I haven't done a lot of these pool things, so we'll notice that these are all pretty much the same. But I'm going to get this canary cable, and let's say I need 3 of them. Actually, I'm going to turn this off, sorry. And I'm going to do a multi-day event here. I'm going to make it continuous. Where was that? Canary cable. And I own 3. I'm going to say I need 2 of them. And now I'm going to look at a collection. I'm going to do left bracket. That's going to bring in all of my collections. And I have my Sony expensive camera. That little exclamation mark shows me, oops, it's booked during that period already. And I have 0 available. So I'm going to fast forward a little bit. And now it's available. And it's kept that range, 13th to the 18th. And I'm going to go ahead and book 2 of those 5 cameras. And I'm going to add them to my budget. So there's my expensive camera. It's figured out that that we have 2 of them over 4 days. And if I hit this little number sign right here, it's going to go figure out, of these items, how many do I have available. And this is, I've got to clear out that rate so we can see it. It's showing me how many are left, and that's a 3 there. You can't really see it. If I zoom in, I'm not sure if that's a 3 or a 5. But I have 5 of them. I'm booking 2, so it should show me that there's 3. Oh, it's showing me that there's 5 available today. This is a quote, and we're going to maybe adjust these. And now let's turn them into an actual. Let's say we've negotiated all the pricing and the items and everything like that. So I'm going to send all to actual. And are you sure you want to do this? So notice we're over here in the upper left on the budget view, the budget column. And what it's going to do is basically make a clone of all these things. It's asking, do I want to keep the entered values for my overrides and dates? I'm going to say yes. It's telling me I've got some conflicts. Good to know. And so now notice we're on the actual tab, and the budget is highlighted yellow to indicate that we've got one, and the actual is indicated yellow as well to see that we've got that. Okay, so I'm going to jump right to the cameras. So I booked this collection of generic cameras, 2 of them, and now I need to check them out. So I'm going to go to my barcode view, and I'm going to say add to project. And I happen to know that the barcode for one of those is 8888. So I can either scan that in or type it in, which is what I've done here. And so it's telling me, hey, that should probably be continuous. So I'm going to say yes. So what it's going to do is it's going to go find its parent. So notice down here, under my collection that starts with the bracket, it's automatically applied my member of that collection to that. And because I originally said that there was going to be 2 of these, it's reduced my collection parent down to 1, and I have a collection member of 1. And another barcode for the same item, same collection family, is 9999, so I'm going to scan that in. And this time it's going to add that second camera, and we can see how the math is getting done here. It's reduced the collection count to 0, and the camera count is now 1 plus 1. And if I collapse that, we're going to see that the collection count is 2. And so that's useful because sometimes the client doesn't want to see, the 5 different cameras or lights or whatever that you pick. They just want to see a summary. So that's how this works with the summaries in the collections and the parent child and all that kind of thing. Let's see. I feel like I'm running out of steam on things to say here. I'm going to look at the questions again. How did you import the Excel list of equipment? Okay, so I didn't actually do the import. We're running out of time, so give a ring into tech support for assistance with that. More calm. Okay, so someone's asking how to create a project, which is actually really easy. You just hit the new button right there. and pick a client. This is a drop-down list of clients. I can also type a couple letters, and that'll reduce my list. So let's say Byron is the client, and that's all you need to do to create a project. So I'm actually just going to hit done at this point. And, oh, it needs a project name. So webinar project 2. Next. Okay, I think we are about, well, we're over time, so I'm going to cut it at that. I apologize if we didn't get to everything, but I think we got a lot in there. Of particular note is scanning in barcodes. I'm just going to add a couple more things. Sorry, can't stop. When we scan a barcode, it's not like the grocery store. When you are at the grocery store, they scan a barcode. That means you're buying it and it's leaving the building. Sometimes in this world, when you scan a barcode, you want to check availability. Is this thing available? So I'm going to scan in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it's just going to check. It doesn't seem that there's a barcode with that item. Okay, I want to add to a project. That means I'm adding that item to this project. Another option is add to the project and check out right now because I'm picking it up and walking out the door. And then check out existing items. I'm going to go back to our previous one and let's do that. Sorry. Check out existing items. So these we booked them all, but we didn't actually check them out. So I'm going to now check out number 8888. All right, it's giving me some hassle there because it's already checked out. I'm going to check out this item right here. I'm going to copy that barcode. So now this item is checked out. I'm going to try my luck on this one. Scan in another barcode. That's already checked out. I'm going to try another one here. Let's do this one. Copy. So I'm just copying the barcodes from here, scanning them in, and now this item is checked out. And then, you know, a week later or whenever it comes back in, I'm going to come in here and say check in. I'm going to paste or scan that same barcode. And because I've done that within 10 seconds, I'm just going to dismiss that. That's a feature that's not quite done yet. Pretend you didn't see that. But basically, that would allow us to either take a picture or write in a description of the problem with that piece of equipment. So I'm going to scan in this piece of equipment right here to check it back in. We're going to see this one come back in as soon as I hit it. That one's checked out more than once. Okay, so I'm going to manually check that back in. So we can check them in manually with a menu or via barcode. Now I'm going to try this guy again. Some time has passed. And now we'll see that this item has been checked in. Okay, so that's basically check in, check out. And then there's also find if checked out. That's, you know, if you want to just find out what project this item is on. Okay, sorry we ran a little long there, and please let us know if you have any other questions. Stay tuned for further webinars. Let us know if there's any you'd like to see. Thanks for joining, everybody. And there will be a video posting of this in a week or two, and we'll let you know when that's available. Thanks, and goodbye.